The Western world had to suffer yet another defeat during the Cold War, when the first successful spaceflight of a Soviet cosmonaut, Yuri Gagarin, was made public. Hardly 3 weeks had passed when President John F. Kennedy delivered his proposal to put a man on the moon. He set the goal of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth before the end of the decade. NASA engineers, led by Wernher von Braun, developed the largest rocket of all time, the 110-meter-tall Saturn V. No larger rocket has ever been built since. While the United By 1967, the United States was ready to perform a test flight with a crew. However, prior to the launch, all 3 astronauts died in a fire on board. In April 1968, the unmanned Apollo 6 was launched for testing purposes. Yet again, serious technical issues arose. But only 1.5 years was left of the 1960s, so even more money was poured into the space program. On the 24th of February 1968, the Americans orbited the moon with the Apollo 8. The 3 astronauts aboard had gone further from the Earth than any other manned mission before. From there, landing on the surface of the moon was just another small step. The 20th of July 1969 is one of the most important dates in the history of spaceflight. It marks the day that mankind stepped on a celestial body other than the Earth for the very first time. First, it was Neil Armstrong who stepped out of the Apollo 11 lunar module. He was then followed by Buzz Aldrin. Kennedy's dream came true before the end of the decade, just as he had promised. Even the most modest estimates put the number of viewers that witnessed Armstrong's memorable comment at 1 billion.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Apollo 13 did not share their luck, however. Due to a ruptured oxygen tank, the crew was unable to land on the moon, and they barely made it back home. NASA regarded the mission as a successful failure. After that, all went well in the program. The Americans had beat the Soviets in the biggest battle of the Cold War, but later landings did not achieve as huge publicity as the first one. No one has stepped on the surface of the moon since 1972. In 1975, the last rocket, Saturn V, was launched, but its objective was not to land on the moon. Orbiting the Earth, the Apollo 18 joined the Soviet spacecraft, the Soyuz 19, an event which marked the symbolic closure of the space race. Or at least that's what everyone thought.